Hi everyone, Sid here in the car ready with another improv journal entry. I only have one show to vlog about, but I feel I might have a rant in me, so who knows how long this video will be. So I had a show, I was at Sunday Night Improv at TSC on Sunday, and we did a straight up Survivor. I was really psyched because I haven't done Survivor in a while, and my favorite thing about the Survivor format is it has my competitive side and my cooperative side like come to a head and maybe combine to make this weird union. But anyway, I really love Survivor, and I accomplished my goal, as I probably mentioned before. Whenever I survive the first round in Survivor, in my mind, that's a win and everything else is gravy. So there's that. I was in 4 scenes. I will start right away. So the first scene I don't have much to say. I was doing the game where someone else does your hands. So I was the hands in that scene. And I think the only thing that I have to say about that is this is a good, yet another example of how important it is when you're in the front, when you're the body and mouth, to really always be aware of what your hands are doing, because the scene was in a bowling alley. I think the suggestion was bowling or something like that. And I was clearly doing this since the beginning of the scene, I think. And at some point, the person whose arms I was doing said, "Let me go grab that bowling ball." And I can't speak, so it's not as if I could say, "Hey dude, you're already holding a bowling ball." So what I did was I opted to grab another one, and he didn't seem to be aware, or if he was, he didn't make it clear to me, so I just did this with the bowling ball that I was holding initially. So yeah, that's an important lesson, and also a good example of weaving it into a larger pattern, because when he said, "Let me go grab that bowling ball," of course I accepted that offer, and I gestured grabbing the bowling ball, and basically, I'm not going to block myself by making the bowling ball that I was already holding vanish. So I opted to just chuck it behind me. Moving on to what was my personal favorite scene that I was in that night. I did a scene with, let's call him Tommy. The Tour de l'Île was happening on Sunday, which is, it's basically a bike ride that's organized, and, a bunch of streets are blocked off and everything because it's Tour de l'Île. You're going around the island on your bicycle. That is the goal of the event. Now, the suggestion was that we were watching the Tour de l'Île, and I have done Tommy. I've only seen him at TSC twice, if I remember correctly, and the force is strong with him. I've done 2 scenes with him on stage. I've done a couple warm-ups with him backstage, and I enjoy playing with him. It's really fun. And the direction that the scene went was that when we were watching the Tour de l'Île, and both of our sons were participating in the Tour de l'Île, and we were being super competitive about it. And we were at some point we were kind of playing a game of how we had prepared our son to be really ready and cycle fast and win the Tour de l'Île, even though it's not really a competition, but we were making it a competition. And I alluded to how we had been competitive ever since high school and stuff like that. And yeah, what was nice about that scene was that not only were we, well, to add to the story, Mark and Coco walked onto the scene as our sons, and long story short, they decided that it's not about winning, and they developed a mutual appreciation for themselves, and they became friends and shit. And at the end of the scene, this is one of my favorite moments, and I'll elaborate on that very shortly. This is one of my favorite moments because it was a situation where Coco and Mark announced that they were getting married and that they were going to cross the finish line together. And I was freaking devastated. I flipped my chair over and I was like, no, and stuff like that. It was a really fun situation to play a father whose son found love and to be absolutely devastated by it. I thought that was an interesting situation to be in. And also, and this is probably this is another reason why I really enjoyed that scene, is because I got to reinforce a habit that I'm working on, which is to have big emotional reactions when I'm on stage. I know, and this is something that I learned from Peter from Elephant Empire a couple weeks ago, to really think of improv in terms of building habits and to have habits when you go on stage. That way, when you have the right habits, you're that much more likely to have good scenes. And something that I've noticed about myself is that I already have the habit of establishing what the relationship is. I think that it's so important. I often find myself naturally just establishing who we are to each other. Often, but not always, without going into some long-ass backstory, because I don't think that's necessary either. But it's important to establish that we're not just coworkers. We're coworkers who joined together, and we went to school together, and we made a promise to each other at some frat party. That's enough to go with the scene. No need for a long-ass monologue and shit. And that is a habit that I already have, I think. And now the habit that I'm trying to build is to have big emotional reactions on stage. I am totally capable of it. I've done it before many times. I remember a scene that I did where I was playing in the moment my character was heartbroken, and I remember very vividly that I was so into playing heartbreak, I almost actually cried when and that scene was with Coco too, when Coco said that she was leaving clown school or whatever. So yeah, it was another opportunity to just build on that habit, and to really make it that much more likely that I will have more big emotional reactions on stage during my scenes. And let's just say I'm on track. I've done it a couple times that day during the workshop and whatnot. Now, the other two scenes, I will talk about them in reverse order. So the last scene I did was with Mark. It was an open scene, and we didn't really have any ideas for suggestions, so we asked for a relationship, and the suggestion was millionaire philosophers, which isn't a relationship. However, I was inspired by that. People who are familiar with this channel probably aren't surprised to hear that I was inspired by the suggestion millionaire philosophers. I think it's really cool, and I looked at Mark with this look like, hey, you want to do it? And I saw Mark go to the audience and say, do you have anything else? And right there, that was a cue that he wasn't really interested in that suggestion. However, the audience, they basically suggested the same thing. I think it was something like billionaire philosophers or trillionaire philosophers or something. I forget what they actually shouted. However, I do remember Mark saying, oh, that's the same thing. Okay, let's just do it. So we did the scene, and it was okay. It ended up getting a 3, which I think, considering everything that I'm going to talk about, is as good as you can ask for, really. But the idea was, and again, I engaged in the habit of establishing who we were to each other, and I offered that we were millionaire philosophers because we made an app that was really successful and made us these millions of dollars. But I think that I think the rest of I don't think the play-by-play is necessary here. I think that I don't think I've done it on this channel, but I've often compared improv with poker in my own mind and in private conversations. But I think this is an example of you comparing this situation to poker. It's like getting a poor hand, not like a crap hand, but on the low end of the marginal hands. So yeah, it's like you get a pretty crappy hand and you make all the right decisions despite these cards that you have, and you still end up losing the hand. And yeah, I mean, honestly, and I've told Mark this before, I'm amazed by his ability of consistently making the right decisions. I think that when you get a suggestion and you're not inspired, to at least do something about it is really vital. It's such a classic rookie mistake that I've done, to accept an offer, to accept a suggestion that doesn't inspire you, and it ends up being a really lame scene. And to have Mark ask for another suggestion was a right decision. And when the audience basically repeated the same suggestion, to just go with it was also the right decision. You don't want to get into some kind of, where you're butting heads with the audience. That is not the situation that you want to put yourself in. And the thing is, and here's where I could have done something better, is that he was doing such a good job of carrying his weight, of pulling his weight in the scene, despite the fact that he wasn't inspired. And to the point where during the intermission, I had to ask him, "Were you inspired by this suggestion?" And he said no. And I said, "Man, you could have fooled me." But it also explains why the scene was as lackluster as it was in my mind. I mean, I think that me and Mark are more than capable of getting a 4 or 5 when we're on stage together. So that's why that 3 felt kind of stale and lame in the moment. However, bring it back to something that I could have done better. Something that I'm always harping on is to put the needs of the scene first. You always need to serve the needs of the scene. And I think that what that scene needed was for me to take over and basically just bulldoze the scene and just shine and have him be the passenger. Where what ended up happening is that we were really co-players and both playing an equal share of advancing the story, basically. So yeah, I think that had I put more emphasis on the fact that he asked for another suggestion and got the same one, and less emphasis on the fact that he was actually contributing and pulling his weight in the scene, to really just take over and just drive that story to the end, maybe that could have gotten us our 4 or 5, and maybe it would have gotten us to survive the second round of eliminations. So I think that is all I have to say about that. Yeah, moving on to the scene that I was actually in just before, which, yeah, basically Carlos and Angela had a scene together, my troop mates, and Carlos, it was his birthday, and he announced it to the audience, and what he asked for was, "What is the best birthday present you've ever gotten?" And someone in the audience said Stevie Wonder, and I think that's a great suggestion, but I remember on the sidelines people going, "Well, who's going to play Stevie Wonder?" And I instantly nominated myself. So when the lights came back up, I almost instantly walked on as Stevie Wonder. I didn't even wait for people to find sunglasses. Like, people found them early into the scene that had already begun and handed them to me, and I put them on over my glasses. And basically that scene got a 5. I think that it was a nice, fun, short scene. I don't think the play-by-play is worth going into. However, and this is, I've alluded to this on this channel before, but let me set it up a bit. So I did a good Stevie Wonder. I know it's pretty easy to do a Stevie Wonder. You just need to do this a lot and speak in this cadence and just make allusions to something to sound really wise and have maybe allusion to all the people in the world to have a really harmonious living and seem like it's saying something very profound. And that's basically all you have to do to be Stevie Wonder. And that's what I did for the entire scene. And what bugged me is that after the show, everyone kept congratulating me on how good my Stevie Wonder was. And that's cool and all. However, to me, it was a gimmick. It was a very bittersweet thing. And I straight up said this twice that night. It was very bittersweet to have my most recognized moment that night be a gimmick. Be a gimmick contribution as I'm walking onto someone else's scene. And I think this is an example of how, and this is why I'm glad I'm recording this on Tuesday and not Monday. As I've said earlier on this channel, it's kind of dangerous, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you and the audience disagree on the job that you did, all things being equal, you're wrong and the audience is right. I think that it's dangerous to apply that too strictly. However, it's a good rule of thumb, and I think that despite the fact that, to me, my favorite scene, that the most fun that I had was the Tour de Lille scene that I did with Tommy. To have people just bring up, oh man, that was such a great Stevie Wonder, was, you take it. I know I did a good Stevie Wonder. I think it's a good example of when you make a decision, you just commit. I knocked Stevie Wonder out of the park. I get it. However, that's not what I wanted to be recognized for that night. So yeah, that was an interesting situation to be in yet again. So on that note, I don't think there's much I can add without rambling on even more. So I will thank you for liking and sharing, and thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, hit the little bell to get notifications. And if you found this if you found this video through your interest in improv, please let me know. Again, if you want more of these, let me know. If you don't, please let me know. I want to hear from you more, actually. And yeah, you'll find links to my social media below. And it is my dream that all the people in the world find the joy of improv and can live a happy life together, just pulling comedy out of their asses and together as one nation under God. All right, thanks for watching.